Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Rory McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. Preparations are in full swing in the Vatican for the funeral Mass of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI on Thursday, January the 5th. Pope Francis will preside over the funeral at 9:30 a.m. Rome time in St. Peter's Square. Director of the Vatican Press Office Matteo Bruni told reporters that the funeral will be simple and in accordance with the wishes of the Pope Emeritus. He emphasised that it will be a solemn yet sober funeral. Reports say that the Holy See has invited only 2 official delegations, one from Italy and one from Germany. Nevertheless, official representatives from other countries are also expected. This will be the first known time that a current pope will preside over the funeral of a former pope. The Vatican has also released a mass booklet for Pope Emeritus Benedict's funeral. A delegation led by Cardinal Reinhard Marx will be present at the funeral, representing the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising, where Benedict XVI served as archbishop from 1977 to 1982. President of the Federal German Republic, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, will lead the official state delegation from Berlin. Many other heads of state and royalty have already come to pay their respects or are attending the funeral in an unofficial capacity. The German Bishops' Conference has recommended the 27 Catholic dioceses in Germany allow a funeral bell toll nationwide on January the 5th at 11 a.m. local time. Cardinal Joseph Zen of Hong Kong has said that the late Pope Emeritus now serves as a powerful intercessor for the Church in China. He hoped that God's grace would transform the Chinese government so that the Church and his country would experience lasting peace. The Bishop Emeritus of Hong Kong will travel to Rome to attend Pope Emeritus Benedict's funeral. A court in Hong Kong gave the 90-year-old cardinal the go-ahead to leave China and head to Italy for 5 days. Cardinal Joseph Zen and 5 other people were found guilty in November 2022 by a Hong Kong court of failing to register an aid fund that had paid for the legal costs and medical care of pro-democracy protesters in 2019. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed his condolences on the death of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, stating that the German Pope was a true friend of the Jewish people. Mr. Netanyahu said he was a great spiritual leader who was fully committed to the historic reconciliation between the Catholic Church and Jews, which he expressed during his historic visit to Israel in 2009. In the meeting, Pope Benedict spoke warmly about the common heritage of Christianity and Judaism and the values that this heritage transmits to all of humanity. The Prime Minister stressed that the nation will remember him as a true friend of the State of Israel and Jews. A Christian was killed and 53 others were kidnapped on Christmas Day in southern Kaduna State in Nigeria. This was after more than 40 Christians were killed in the week leading up to the holiday. Mass graves now litter the community and the countryside in Nigeria. People can no longer go to their farms for fear of being gunned down. According to the group Open Doors 2022 World Watch list, 4,650 Christians were killed in the country last year, more than anywhere else. In his New Year's message titled Nigeria 2023 No Place for Prophets of Doom, published by ACI Africa, Bishop Emmanuel Adeyoteze Badeyo of Oyo urged Nigerians to practice diligence and a change of heart. He acknowledged it is difficult to continue living in a country where crime is tolerated or even rewarded, and valour and virtue are punished. Pope Francis has nominated the titular Archbishop of Rossel, Christoph Zakia El-Kassis, as the new Apostolic Nuncio to the United Arab Emirates. The nunciature in Abu Dhabi, which was inaugurated in February 2022, will house Archbishop El-Kassis as its first resident nuncio. El-Kassis was born on August the 24th in 1968 in Beirut, Lebanon, before being ordained a priest on the 21st of May in 1994. He holds a PhD both in canon law and in civil law and joined the Holy See's diplomatic service in the year 2000. From then on until 2019, he served in the apostolic nunciatures in Indonesia, Sudan and Turkey, as well as the Holy See's Secretariat's Unit for Relations with States. On November the 24th in 2019, he was designated as Pakistan's apostolic nuncio. He is fluent in Arabic, English, Italian, French, Spanish and Bahasa. According to sources cited by the Telegraph on Monday, the United Kingdom will formally designate Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organisation. Last week, Iran's Revolutionary Guards detained 7 people with ties to the UK for anti-government demonstrations that erupted in the wake of the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian who was detained supposedly for violating the country's strict Islamic dress code. According to the article, both British Home Secretary Suella Braverman and Security Minister Tom Tugendhat support the action, which will be publicised in the coming weeks. If the group were declared a terrorist organisation, it would be illegal to be a member, to attend meetings, or to display the group's logo in public. According to a rights group, 2 Iranian youths who participated in months-long rallies are now facing the death penalty. Campaigners worry that dozens of men could be hanged as Iran uses the death penalty as a form of intimidation to put an end to the protests after the death in custody of Mahsa Amini. Mehdi Mohammadi Fard, an 18-year-old protester, was found guilty of torching a traffic police checkpoint in Nowshar, that is according to the Oslo-based Iran human rights organisation. He was given the death penalty for his crimes. Meanwhile, according to the judiciary's Mizan online news website, the Supreme Court affirmed 19-year-old Mohammed Boroghani's death sentence in December on the grounds of enmity towards God. Boroghani is accused of setting ablaze the governor's office in Pagdasht, as well as wounding a security officer with a knife to kill him and cause dread among civilians. The parish priest of the Church of La Santa Cruz in Bolivia has denounced the police brutality that took place on Sunday morning. Police entered the premises of the parish and fired tear gas canisters at young people who were holding a vigil. People had gathered hours earlier in the vicinity of El Cristo to hold a peaceful vigil demanding the release of the governor of Santa Cruz, Luis Fernando Camacho, who since December the 30th has been in preventative detention in the maximum security prison of Chonchocoro. The encounter ended in violent clashes, with the police with more than 40 being arrested, hundreds being injured and vehicles being burned. The detention of the prominent opposition leader has caused widespread anger across Bolivia. A Florida school district's policy prohibiting a child identifying as transgender from using bathrooms based on gender identity rather than biological sex was maintained by a federal appeals court. In a 7-4 ruling, the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals declared last Friday that the St. Johns County School Board's restroom policy did not discriminate against transgender students or violate federal civil rights legislation. Judge Barbara Lagoa said the school board's bathroom policy is clearly related to its objective of protecting the privacy interests of students to use the bathroom away from the opposite sex. She drew parallels with how the policy also seeks to ensure the same in other spaces, such as in locker rooms. The Catholic Episcopal Conference of Zimbabwe in Africa has called for the restoration of relationships, the development of social structures, and the settlement of disputes. The Episcopal Commission for Justice and Peace said that the country urgently needs a real dialogue between social and political parties. The economic situation in Zimbabwe has deteriorated 5 years after the removal of President Robert Mugabe, who ruled the country for 37 years. According to the World Bank, the proportion of individuals who have fallen into extreme poverty has nearly doubled, rising from 30% in 2017 to 50% during the COVID pandemic. The bishops said that youth are particularly affected by the growing wealth disparity, to the point where they are referred to as the lost generation. The Catechism in a Year podcast featuring American Catholic priest Father Mike Schmitz, which was launched on January the 1st, has received a tremendous response from listeners. This new podcast follows the big success of the Bible in a Year podcast, which was hosted by Father Schmitz and biblical scholar Jeff Cavins. Over 365 days, the entire Catechism of the Catholic Church will be covered. According to the website of Catholic Association Ascension, the podcast will help Catholics to understand the essentials of the Catholic faith and why they matter. The podcast will be available on apps including Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Hallow. A Facebook group has been started by the organisers to guide the participants and listeners of the podcast. The group already has more than 90,000 members. Church representatives in South Korea have joined other religious and civil organisations to call on the government to pass a package of bills currently before Parliament that would abolish the death penalty. At a joint news conference, religious and civic organisations urged the government to transform South Korea into a truly abolitionist country. The news conference commemorated the executions of 23 prisoners, which took place on December the 30th in 1997. And the subsequent moratorium on executions in South Korea. The special bill on the abolition of the death penalty was tabled at the National Assembly on October the 7th in 2021, that being the 9th time since it was first proposed on December the 7th in 1999. Back then, only 30 of the 300 parliamentarians supported the bill. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more. And do remember, you can also visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.